Hit subscribe to the DIY Writer to support your hardworking authors and also lessen your chances of ending up as a victim in their next book. Join me at the first annual Icarus Book Convention, May 8th and 9th. This conference has a great lineup of speakers, including little old me, talking about podcasts, vlogs, and other neat author stuff. Go to Icarus, IQARUS book, con.com for more information. Hope to see you there. Hey, this is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast, and you may recognize, if you're watching the video, the guy that is sitting right next to me or across from me or virtually across the pond or however you want to say it, but we do have Dr. Bruce Olav Solheim with us again today. This will be the second time on the show, thank God, because last time, loved it. It was so much fun having him on talking about everything under the sun as far as aliens and paranormal contacts and everything else that we thought we'd do it again. But Bruce also has some new stuff coming out that we want to talk about. So without any further ado, Bruce, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Now, the last time we were talking about your production, a short trip through hell, right?
Yeah, tough trip through hell. Yeah,
tough trip.
So a stream play, kind of a combination. It's an online theatrical play, live with 3D, I guess, settings, you know, and with live actors in remote locations. So perfect for the pandemic, or even beyond. And so, yeah, we're still doing that. In fact, it ties into the Snark comic #2 that I thought we would talk a little bit about today. And then maybe, if you want, if we have time, talk about the new book that'll come out later, probably in the summer, called Anzar, which is also alien related. So a lot of alien stuff.
Well, let's start off with Snark. It's a graphic novel.
Yeah. So I got one right here. This is Snark 2, available on Amazon, and it's the continuing adventures of our alien hybrid, human alien hybrid friend Snark and his cosmic staff. And this time, as it says there at the bottom, will this be Earth's future? And it's pretty grim there. It looks like the Statue of Liberty's chopped off, its arms chopped off. So it looks like trouble. And the premise of Snark is that he comes to Earth with a mission from his home planet of reptilians, you know, the kind of the nastier of the alien species. He comes here with the mission of trying to prepare us for colonization, and a very serious mission. Well, he decides that he really likes us and wants to save us instead, and save us from this colonization or invasion, if you will. And the cosmic staff is his sidekick. He's kind of the comedic relief for this kind of heavy premise. But Snark has adventures. He goes to different places, meets human beings, gets to really like them, then decides he wants to help them. Of course, that puts him at odds with the reptilians, the nasty reptilians back in the home planet. So now he's got a dilemma. You know, how is he going to help he's half reptilian, so he's got, the reptilians need some kind of help, but they want to approach it in a, take over our planet, kind of solution. He's trying to come up with a compromise and save us. So that's kind of the basic premise. And the first one came out in January of 2020, December 2019. This one just came out in March. So 16 more stories and adventures that he has. It combines science fiction, fantasy, humor, history. It deals with social issues, but not in a pedantic or preachy way, because I don't really like that. I like to form my own opinions. So he just kind of through the eyes of an innocent.
Whoa, wait, you like to form your own opinions?
Yeah, I instead of having them, rammed down my throat, which happens a lot nowadays, unfortunately. So I don't want to do that to the people that are nice enough to buy the comic. So I respect them for that. So they can draw their own conclusions. But there's a lot of humor in there. Everything I write, even the really serious stuff, I try to put humor in there because, let's face it, there's even in the worst situations, you can find some things that are funny. Sometimes you just have to laugh instead of cry, that kind of stuff. So So that's basically what we're doing. I teamed up with Gary Dumm, again, the artist who's been I've been working with for the last couple of years. He's been doing comic art since the 70s, worked with Harvey Pekar and American Splendor. And the whole idea is it's a comic for all ages, not just for adults. I could easily write one just for adults, but I decided to make it all ages, which makes it a little trickier because you got to make it appealing to young people, to kids, and to adults. So the example I used, you may be familiar with the Rocky and Bullwinkle show from a long time ago. And the Rocky and Bullwinkle show was very popular with kids and with adults. Kids watch it one way, adults watch it a different way because there's like hidden humor, subtext. That's kind of what I do with Snark, or at least I'm not saying it's as good as Rocky and Bullwinkle, but that's the model that I use to try to make it an all ages comic.
See, when I was a kid, it was I saw the reruns. And when I was a kid, I was like, oh, this is horrible. And it was when I was in college, and I don't know why, but all of a sudden, somebody had it on a VCR tape. And they had, like 4 hours of it or whatever. And so we sat down, and it might've been the beer, it might've been something else, but all of a sudden I got it. It's like, this is awesome, but yeah, it took me a while to jump on that bandwagon, but
yeah, that's what we did. And it's a fictional, story or whatever, but as my dear friend David Wilson, one of my writing mentors, says, fiction is more true than nonfiction. So you can put stuff in there, your own experiences, your friends, whoever, hide characters behind other characters, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that in there. And in dealing with aliens too, there's having the experience that I've had with the paranormal and all that. That's behind a lot of the fictional story too.
Well, the nice thing is you can tackle an awful lot with fiction. And then if somebody really questions you, it's like, hey, it's fiction, lighten up.
Yeah.
I made all this up. It's not you-ish.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can be more honest in fiction.
Yes. And not worry about hurting anybody's feelings, because you can convince them it's all made up.
No, just need that little statement at the beginning.
Oh, just like on the TV shows, right?
Yep, exactly. So that's what I've been doing now. I do have a plan for Snark 3 in the future, but before that, there's a spin-off comic within the Snark world that it'll be a female character named Dr. Jekyll, not associated with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But the name Dr. Jekyll, the alien hunter, and it's actually a prequel to Snark 1. So we find out who she's about, and then she meets Snark, and then and then there'll be Snark 3 after that. So she's kind of an interesting character.
Is that something that you just kind of came up with and said, okay, now I should write this? And is that part of your original plan, or is that something that was just all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I need to do this?
No, it wasn't part of the original plan. Like most things that are kind of cool, it just kind of creeps up and pops in, and when you least expect it. So like I got, she's in Snark 2. There's a story called Dr. Jekyll. And so she meets Snark in Snark 2 and the Cosmic Staff.
Can you put that back up? Those graphics are really good.
Yeah, this is Gary Dumm's artwork. It's just incredible. Let me see, I can show any page, but I wanted to show that particular one there. Yeah, so Dr. Jekyll.
Man, he does good work.
Yeah, it's classic comic book style. And the coloring, his wife does the color and the text, the lettering. And it's just, some of these, they're just incredible. They're just remarkable. Like here, this one just blows me away.
I like the way they laid out those panels.
Yeah,
Cool.
Gary, I work with Gary. I give him a rough idea of what I want, including some panel ideas and some rough art. And sometimes I just use photographs or whatever. And it's kind of like a mock-up. I call it a mock-up. I send it to him, and then he takes it and he rearranges it to make sense. Yeah. And he uses it as kind of a beginning point, And so oftentimes he'll use some of what I came up with, but then he'll modify it, and because he's the expert. I mean, he's been illustrating comics since the 70s, so
Sure.
he knows a lot more than I do about sequential art and how things should be paced. And
yeah.
But and then he adds his own editorial stuff. In fact, some of the snarkier comments from the cosmic staff are actually Gary. That's why I say that Gary Dumb is actually the cosmic staff. And my wife says that I'm Snark, so I'm kind of the straight man.
Okay.
In this story. So it's kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, Dr. Jekyll, so she just came up in the story. And then I decided, man, she should have her own comic book. Even before anybody said anything that she should have her own comic book, I decided she should have her own comic book. And I wrote it, and it's sitting there waiting, the mock-ups, for next year when Gary has more time, and we'll probably put that out next year.
Oh,
that's
cool.
what I'm hoping.
Very
but just
cool.
to give yourself and your fans, listeners, a little thing. Her full name is Henna Jekyll, so Henna, and then Jekyll. You know, it's like Dr. Jekyll. That's an anagram for J. Allen Hynek. So the original Project Blue Book scientist. So I love anagrams. So so that's kind of a little Easter egg for your. It's not. I don't present that in the book. I just have to know that.
You just have to know that.
Yeah. So. But yeah, it's an anagram for J. Allen Hynek. So that's kind of an homage to Project Blue Book and the beginnings of the UFO, investigations and so forth. But so anyway, she's an interesting character, and I think it's time for she's middle-aged. She's not a superhero. She's an academic, and she's not, she doesn't. What's that movie with Angelina Jolie, Laura Croft, Tomb Hunter,
oh,
whatever?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, she's not proportioned like a Barbie doll. She's just a regular middle-aged lady who's an academic. So I just think sometimes for young girls, they get this idea that they have to look like something that they'll probably never look like. So why not have a lady that looks just like a normal lady, who's very heroic, but not like a superhero, more realistic. So anyway, that was my idea, kind of a more positive role model for women. At least that's what I have a daughter, and I saw how she struggled with that kind of image, especially body image and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I
remember my daughter at age 13, or even younger, I think she was 11, and she said, "Daddy," I said, "What?" And she was crying, and she said, "Daddy, I'm way too fat, and I don't look like the girls on the magazines, Yeah. And I got, oh my God, that was heartbreaking to hear your own kids say that. And then that's when it really hit me. This is serious, these young girls are paying attention to that stuff, and it's constantly barraged, on them from commercial advertising, and it's very unhealthy. So I think for most people, not that you shouldn't be physically fit, but eat right and stuff, but certain body types, not everybody's going to look like that. So
well, yeah, exactly. I've got all daughters, and I've ran through that a couple of times so far. Can't wait for the next 2 times, but it is heart-wrenching, and it just sucks. And it's all over the place. Yep. And I get that. And, I'm not against, beautiful women, showing off their bodies on the front of magazines. I'm not saying that. No. But on the other hand, society, somehow these girls get the idea that they have to look like that. And it's like, no, there's all sorts of different body types and shapes and sizes and blah, 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 blah. And, it's nothing you have to be concerned about, especially when you're in high school, because high school does not freaking matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't.
In the long run.
Well, high school's very emotional for a lot of kids, and it's horrible and this and that. And then once they get into college, they start to figure out, hey, there's this big world out there, and it's way different than what it was in high school. And just if you just get through high school, damn it.
That's true.
It's puberty like, and everything else.
You got to run the gauntlet, Once you get through, you're probably going to be okay if you can make it through that. You know, you'll have new challenges, different kinds of challenges, but
Right.
Very true.
Yep. And then all of a sudden you're 50 and looking back going, that wasn't so bad. I wonder what the next 50 will come up with.
Yeah. Well, apparently, this generation of people are going to live. There's going to be a lot more people in their hundreds, and I'm 62. So, there's a good chance, because I don't smoke, I don't drink, I try to exercise, I could live to be 100, God forbid there's some other thing that comes up, but so there's going to be a lot of people living a lot longer, and we're going to have to find room for everybody somehow, figure out a better way to manage things. But
yeah, we just populate Antarctica.
Yeah, or every time I drive around in the desert Southwest, I think, man, look at all this space out there. There's got to be some way we can figure out a way to get get people a place to live and not be so overcrowded.
They did it in Star Wars.
Sure.
Yeah,
those little huts that they were living in.
In the water farmers where they'd suck the water out of the air, and whole thing. You bet.
We're smart. We can figure it out.
Chances are that somebody will take some ideas from a fiction book and make it real.
It's happened before, all the old Star Trek stuff. We have that technology all around us all the time now.
Yep.
So from the original Star Trek, but
right.
So I it doesn't surprise me, and it moves much faster now, of course, too.
Mm-hmm.
So in Snark 2, when I was writing it, I came up with I don't want to give it away too much, but there's the threat that the aliens pose is not a traditional threat like you would in War of the Worlds, where they arrive with the giant spider blaster things, but which is cool, but it's more of a semi-biological threat. So, which is I started conceiving of Snark 2 before the pandemic hit. So when the pandemic really hit, I thought, wow, this is kind of, I'm not saying that it's prophetic, but it's very coincidental anyway. Well, it ends up being the methodology.
I think I've told you this before, but I'm big into conspiracy theories. I suck them up and I just I love to read them because I think it's sometimes very good, sometimes they're paranoid, but sometimes it's very good fiction.
Yeah.
And I like there's a montage of Bill Gates is terraforming the world for a new population of reptilian, type people to be coming out of the ground. And that's why they're, global warming's not really real, because what they're doing is they're trying to cool down the earth and dim the sun so that, these reptilians won't need to worry about their sensitive eyes when they come out of the ground. And, that's why the pandemic is here. It was all caused by, this, that, and the other thing. And they're just trying to kill off the human race in a slow, methodical manner because they need to freeze dry us for food or something. It goes on and on and on. And it's like, this is great. I should, this is great, and
it's like piecing together all the greatest 1970s sci-fi movies from Soylent Green to, everything else, but it's interesting that from that, then scientists get ideas, people get ideas, so I think that, I know sometimes people take things a little bit too seriously and too immediately, and then they can get themselves into trouble. But the bad guys in my Snark 2 are reptilians. So
yeah,
they're not nice. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So is this fiction or is this, foretelling? Just kidding.
Yeah, that's exactly. We leave it up to the reader to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. And I actually think that there's a lot of fiction out there that makes more sense than what's on the news right now. But, and a lot of these conspiracy theories, it's just, there's a lot of crazy crap going on right now.
Well, you heard about the, the so-called Wuhan virus, origins in Wuhan, right? Although there's, all kinds of, different conflicting ideas, but there was a 1981 book. Who was it by? was one of the big, Dean Koontz, big writer,
yep.
right? 1981, I forgot the name of the book. I looked it up. I saw the passage. They talk about a manufactured virus that comes out of a lab in Wuhan in China. And this was in 1981.
Oh, it actually is in the Wuhan Valley.
In a weapons lab, a bioweapons lab. Yeah. So that is fiction, right? That was fiction, 1981. People are, probably scared people to death then. And now all of a sudden, here we are. Now I know there's people that say, oh no, it was, bats or whatever. I'm of the opinion, and every once in a while I share my opinion. It's not just my opinion, because I had students from China when the whole thing started, people that came from mainland China to take classes here in the US. And we were talking about the origins, the government of China saying that it was in this wet market and people were eating bats or pangolins or whatever. And she looked at me and she said, that's a lie. And she's from China. She said, that's a lie. It came from, there's a weapons lab there. And that was before everybody heard about the weapons lab.
Right.
So then when you hear about that and you're saying, okay, never mind that there's this bioweapons lab right there. Let's just concentrate on the fish market. That's really the origin, people eating bats. And she said, we don't eat bats. What are you talking about? Who eats bats? And so like the crazier the lie, oftentimes the easier people believe it sometimes. So,
well,
the obvious thing is right there.
I don't discount that. I'm sure that I don't think it was released on purpose. I'm guessing there's some sort of
I don't think that either. I don't go that far.
Some sort of an accident. And believe it or not, the US has done that also.
Sure. We've had a lot of problems. The downwinders, from our nuclear testing and the experiments, God knows what they did to us when I was in the Army. They would give us a little pill and they don't tell us what it is, an injection, they don't tell us what it is. Later you find out, oh my God, they gave you some experimental stuff. And
what they, I was reading some stuff on the Tuskegee Airmen and what they did to them with syphilis, I think it was.
Yeah, the Tuskegee experiment, horrible.
Yeah, it's like, we've done our own fair share of stuff. So I mean, you can't shame, it sucks that it happened, but on the other hand, we all play in the same sandbox, I think.
There's some dirty dealing going on, and it's all comes down to geopolitics and power and maneuvering, and the agencies, the three-letter agencies on all sides do stuff that we don't even know 1/100th of what's going on.
No,
really, in reality.
No, not even close. And that not knowing allows us to go on our happy little way and just live our lives.
Yeah, sometimes it's better not to know. Ignorance is bliss, right?
Right. Right.
Or you can just sweat everything and everything's a horrible crisis, and then it's just you got to, at a certain point you just got to, okay, I'm going to go work on my car, or or tend the garden or something. I got to put that stuff behind.
It was
play with my kids, whatever.
It was funny because when this first started, my dad was very tongue-in-cheek about the pandemic and the lockdown. He said, in the 60s we had a way of handling this kind of stuff. With the Hong Kong flu, we had Woodstock, fixed it all. And but his basic message was, you just can't live in fear. You have to go out and if you catch something, you catch something. That's just kind of the way it is. But you can't be scared and lock yourself up in your house and never see the light of day again, because then you're causing more problems than you're fixing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because you're actually brought up in a conversation just a few weeks ago, because my wife and I decided that we would go on a vacation. Went down to New Orleans. We took some of the haunted tours and did that kind of stuff. And we're sitting there, and she goes, that one guy that you interviewed, the doctor, we should have brought him down here. Last time he told me about spirits attaching themselves to places, so maybe not.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of a scaredy cat. If I know something bad is somewhere, I'm not going to go in there. I mean, I've had it happen to me, and I've survived and everything, but I don't go searching for that stuff. Believe me, if somebody tells me there's a demon in there, Okay, I believe you. I don't need to go. I'm good. I don't have to go check it out.
Yeah, well, maybe we push things a little bit, but those tours are so doggone entertaining, and
they are.
And the stories change, from building to building, which I thought was really funny. There's that many horrible things that happened in New Orleans that they can have a different tour with a different story for the same building. It's like, oh, good.
Yeah,
different time frames and stuff like that. So
I would love to take that, but my wife and I and family did one in Old Town San Diego, and that was pretty interesting.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, Old Town San Diego, especially the Cosmopolitan Hotel. And so if you ever get to San Diego, do the one of the haunted tours, the Cosmopolitan Motel. Some weird stuff went down in there when we were there. Even for my family, who aren't necessarily, have this sensitivity that I have, they were experiencing stuff. So.
Oh, wow. I was talking to I was talking to an author from from New Zealand, and he was making fun of us for having so many serial killers in the United States. And it's like, we've had a lot of weird stuff happen here. A lot of weird stuff, and I don't know, it just kind of interesting.
We bring people in from all around the world. We represent all 180 nations here in the United States. So we're going to get a few weirdos, in that bunch somewhere.
We are.
But you notice a lot of them come from the Pacific Northwest. That's kind of a scary thing.
That is.
That's where I'm from. Yeah, it's just, I think part of it's the climate, and who knows. But living in Seattle, I love Seattle, but so much of the year is gray, and not that it rains as much as people think, but it's kind of drizzly and gray, and it's pretty far north, so you get less sunlight anyway in the wintertime. So people who are depressed or prone to that, or prone to that kind of darker way of thinking, then you end up with the Green River Killer and
so I wonder what's worse, that or Alaska, where all of a sudden it's sunlight for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I've experienced that in Alaska, also in Norway. The summers, you would think it'd be better having the daylight all the time, like the midnight sun, but in a way it kind of throws off everything, because then you don't ever want to sleep. So it's hard to go to sleep because the sun is out, and it's the winter time. I spent winters in Norway where the sun doesn't come up for several months. And to me, that was hard for a different reason, because I never wanted to wake up. I felt like a bear in hibernation. I would get up and I'd be like in this twilight zone,
Yeah.
And for me, being as sensitive as I am, I'm halfway to the twilight zone anyway. So it was a strange thing. And I felt like a bear in hibernation in the wintertime in Norway.
Cool. Not cool. Not really cool. No. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the Contact in the Desert, the virtual event. That's in June, the 25th through the 28th this summer.
Yes.
So you're going to be speaking there, and you're actually going to be talking about this new book that you got coming out, I assume.
Yeah, that's the topic. Anzar. Anzar is an ancient alien mystic of my acquaintance. And I've known him for a while, intensively for the last 3 years. But that's going to be kind of the topic of my my presentation. And because it's virtual, they want us to do a pre-recorded, kind of like a lecture thing. And then afterwards, a live question and answer. So that's what we're going to do. And I decided I didn't want to just do a talking head. Not that this is not good, but if people are paying a lot of money to go to Contact the Desert, and it's not going to be live, it's not going to be in person, I figured I got to get some production values going, a lot of them. So, to make up for my dry professorial delivery. So I enlisted the help of my technical director for the theater, our lockdown theater. And he said, "Oh yeah, great. Just do your thing on a green screen, send it to me, I'll jazz it up." And oh my God, he made it into like a Star Trek episode. I mean, it's pretty cool. And I said, and if you want to take me off the screen or minimize me, that's cool. Or maybe just my voice and you're doing other things, that's cool. So he was able to do that. And I think it's actually pretty good. It's not bad. So I hope people, feel like they're getting their money's worth, at least with what I'm doing. But it's, yeah, I was supposed to do it last year. And then of course they decided to cancel because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
This year they're doing virtual. I've talked to people who've gone to these virtual conferences, and of course they're not as good as in person. I mean, part of the fun is you give these speeches or you give these talks, and there are live people there. You're talking, you're in the same room. Afterwards, there's people getting drinks together and walking around, and the sidebar conversations, that kind of stuff. So it's harder to have that in a virtual setting, but it's better than nothing. That's the way I look at it. So I think there's some pretty interesting people, a lot of them whom I know, that are going to be there. But yeah, so it's my talk is based on this new book. It'll be out in the summer sometime, and it's called Anzar, after this ancient alien mystic. So.
Well, I was just kind of looking at the tickets. It's $200 for a general pass. But if you want the virtual galactic pass, which I assume gives you some private rooms with the speakers or something like that, that's $600.
Yeah,
which still isn't bad.
No, I mean, if you're really into it, I'm just being honest, if you're really into it and you really want to get a behind the scenes kind of thing and one-on-one with some of these, or not one-on-one, but almost virtually with some of these guest speakers, I think it's great. There's a lot of workshops and panel discussions that I think can get pretty lively. At least I've been to Contact in the Desert a couple of years ago, not as a participant, but as I knew some people and I was helping them there, sure. Yvonne Smith and Terry Lovelace and others. And so I helped them, and I got to help them in their workshops, and it was fascinating. It's a great place to people watch, but these people are really interesting that are giving these presentations. Fascinating. That my biggest problem was trying to figure out, do I go to this one or this other one? They're offered at the same time. How do I decide which one? And now I guess you'll be able to, because they're pre-recorded, then you can, watch all of them, I guess. And then if you get the super galactic pass or whatever it is, you get to see all the workshops and the intensives, as they call them, that kind of stuff. So I think it's pretty cool. If you're into it, because you're not going to find a in-person one right now. So I think it's a good way to go. And I know I've been working on this thing for a couple of years now, this presentation that I'm doing. So I think it's pretty good. And what makes it even better is that my friend Jordan made it look cool.
That's really cool, though. I mean, I am positive that everybody will appreciate the extra effort you're putting into it versus just stagnant background and here I'm talking or whatever. And, the extra visual effects will make a difference, I'm sure.
Yeah, he even put some music in there too, which is awesome. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm enjoying it, and but this whole thing is because of this book. I've done these 3 paranormal books, the Timeless Trilogy, Timeless Deja Vu, and Timeless Trinity, and now the Anzar book is not part of the. It's not like the 4th in the series. It's just focusing on one particular contact that I've had, and. It's kind of a voyage of discovery because, I've had hypnotic regressions with Yvonne Smith, who's the world-renowned hypnotic regressionist dealing with UFO folks, and I've had 4 sessions with her. I have my own conscious memories of what has happened to me. And so I wrote about a lot of those things, including a little bit about Anzar in the last 2 Timeless books. But this book focuses on that process and how I came to know Anzar and how he has impacted me and how I continue to have contact with him. So it's kind of like the book is going to go over who he is, why he is, what he's saying to me, and what are we supposed to do with it. Yeah. And he's got a lot of interesting wisdom that doesn't come from me. I mean, he's got some incredible things to say, and he's also very, he can put you in your place too. Like one time you know, I found I was reading a lot of quantum physics and reading a lot of experiences, and I started to feel like things were clicking, like I could figure out, oh, I think I know how this works. You know, the spirit world, the alien world, the quantum world, they're all the same thing. And I was feeling really confident. I went outside one night, I looked up at the stars like I do every night, and I said, you know, I think I'm really getting it. I'm understanding what's going on. And then I heard this voice, and it was his voice. And he said, oh, you have no idea. So it's like you're just scratching the surface. In other words, you know, calm down, calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're still learning, kiddo, which I think is true for all of us.
So is that kind of the way it happens? Is you're in a moment and you're thinking, and all of a sudden you hear this extra voice in your head? Or, I mean, how does it come to you? Is it?
It could be. In that case, it did.
Yeah.
But most of the time I arrange it. So I take these spirit walks, about 3 or 4 of them a week, where I take a long walk in a certain time period. I do a protection prayer, and then I get into a meditative state as I'm walking, looking at the mountains, you know, beautiful scenery here in Southern California. And I then ask to speak to him. And that's usually, or my other spirit guides, or if I have another person who's passed on that somebody wants me to contact, I'll do that too. But during that time, I'll talk to him and ask him questions. He'll answer. And as I'm doing this, I'm recording myself. So I can, not that the recording picks up his voice, so it's not that cool. That would be really cool if it did that. But it's what I'm hearing or what he's showing me, and I'll describe it. And I will record it into my phone. And then when I get back, and I get down off of the meditation, not down off. I mean, that sounds like I'm on drugs or something. I bring myself down to a normal level of consciousness, and then oftentimes I can't remember what he has said, so that's why I record it. And then when I come home, I transcribe it. I'll listen to the video or the audio, and I'll write down everything that was said. And then I've been doing that for about 3 years. So most of the book is that transcript, day to day, these contacts that I've had, and what he has had to say about what's going on in the world, what I think about what's going on, what advice he's giving me. And I think it's pretty fascinating. And also another part of the book is kind of the theoretical. So I have a lot of footnotes in there. So it's more of an academic book than my timeless books, which are more anecdotal, you know, kind of paranormal memoirs, if you will. This is a paranormal memoir, but it's also, there's a lot of research that I've gone into about, you know, all the things that I've studied, and, you know, how I think the alien world and the spirit world and the quantum world mesh together. So there's a lot of that. And that was based on some papers that I did for MUFON. I did one research paper for MUFON that'll be published later, and then another one for FREE, which is that organization founded by NASA astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who passed away a number of years ago. So I know those folks, and they asked me to write something as well. So I used a lot of that research material to put into this book. So the Anzar book is going to have a little bit for everybody. It'll have, if you just want to read what Anzar says, cool, that's in there. If you want more of the in-depth, you know, research stuff that I do as a historian, I love research, so that's in there too, the theoretical stuff. So it's a little bit of a combination. So it's been a lot of fun to write and to go through, you know, what he has told me. And do you want me to share some of what he has said that I think is pretty cool?
I was just going to ask you, do you mind?
No, I don't mind. I'll give you a preview. Let's see here. I'm just looking at because I want to quote him correctly. Nothing worse than misquoting an ancient alien mystic, right?
Well,
it can bring down some wrath on you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'll just share some of these
I'll have
things.
to stand in line with my wife.
One thing that he always says, every time I talk to him, he reminds me to keep love in my heart and always operate from a position of love. I mean, he's very specific about the wording. Now, a lot of people say that, you know, keep love in your heart, but this always operate from a position of love. You know, this has been very helpful to me. And, you know, when people get really heated in their discussions and I try to remain cool and try to keep the peace, you know, I always use that. He also told me, you know what will happen in the future because you manifest it, which really puts us more in charge of our lives than we think. And it's, to me, this stuff is fascinating. He told me all of this is an illusion, which of course, when you read about quantum physics, that's exactly what it is. The explicit order, what we see every day, is really not how it really is if you look at the implicate order or the quantum world.
Well, both quantum and also philosophy also tells you the same thing.
Exactly.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. And then he was the one who told me the alien, spirit, and quantum worlds are all the same thing. He told me that we are all the aliens. We are all the aliens. So in other words, there's a combination of things. I've kind of got some clarification on that, that some of the aliens are actually future humans. Some are actually off planet, but we're all related. That's why I call my abductions, I call them reunions, because we are really related to them. Distantly, but we are related. And that's what he has confirmed with me. So he says some abductions are reunions. There are other abductions, even though they might be reunions. You have people, I'm sure you've talked to them, that have had very negative experiences, abduction experiences. And that I don't discount. I think probably people have, and it reminds me of kind of, I taught the Vietnam War course, and I could have some veterans that have accepted everything that happened that they saw in war, as horrible as it might have been, and others that are totally devastated and can barely make it. And I don't blame either one of them. I don't say you're wrong, you're right. I say it's up to the individual how they package it, how they decide to process it. And you can't, criticize somebody for how they process the traumatic event. I think all alien contact is somewhat traumatic, but for some people it's even more so. Let's see here. Anyway, that's just some of the stuff. Oh, he talks about a leap of consciousness. You are entering an era of reconversion that will require a leap of consciousness, not a leap of faith, but a leap of consciousness.
Is there a difference?
I think it doesn't exclude a leap of faith, but it's something that if you put it in those terms, it's something that you are experiencing. It's not just something you're, like some people, I grew up in the Lutheran church. I went to Sunday school, all that. I believe in God. I pray many times a day. But it's one thing to have faith that there is a God, or that there's this incredible force out there in the universe, something much greater than ourselves. And then it's another thing to have the experience, where you've experienced something that is way beyond what we're capable of doing. And I think that encourages a leap of consciousness, where your consciousness expands. Okay. It's an evolutionary experience. And I think that's what he's referring to. And I think we're in an era of reconversion. What I think he means by that is that we are converting to what ancient people already knew. And we're combining that with modern technology and science and modern society to make an even better world. If we can realize our human potential that ancient people already knew, the paranormal, the supernatural, and accept that as part of the reality that we have, and combine that with science and technology, we're going to be much better off. And that's going to take us a notch higher on the evolutionary ladder. At least that's the way I see it. And so these are some of the things that he brings up. Sometimes he has a great sense of humor. One of my, I'll leave you with this one, the last quote here from, he says that some of the alien entities, let's see, let me get it right here. Some of the alien entities are entertainers, and I'll get back to that, why that is. They're here for fun or to entertain alien groups. Some are good, some are not, just like Hollywood. That's what he told me.
I can buy into that, yeah.
So he has a great sense of humor as well, which is hilarious, And the idea behind that is an idea that I was kind of familiar with when I looked at the example of how when the New World was discovered by the Europeans, you know, they came in and different people came in. You had explorers, you had conquistadors, you had missionaries, you had merchants, you had soldiers, you had settlers, you know, every entertainers, you know, you had everybody coming in. They all had their own mission, their own angle, their own, you know, what they wanted to do.
Right.
And I think it's the same with alien entities. And I think that they all have different motives. And that's why there's so many different people with different experiences. Some people can have a horrible experience. And then other people can, you know, in my case, mostly been very positive. So it depends on who you encounter and how you process the encounter. So yeah, it really takes a leap of consciousness. And as Anzar and my friend Gene, who's one of my spirit friends, always says, that experiencing is believing and believing is experiencing.
I can't remember where I saw this quote, but I wrote it down, and it says, I wouldn't have seen it if I didn't believe it. And I thought that was, you know, I just thought that was very interesting. So
it is,
you know, I write, I have a stack of sticky notes and I write stuff down all the time just so I can look at it. Oh yeah, that's great. You know,
I mean, that is good. I heard a Native American historian, philosopher named M. Scott Momaday, and he's a Kiowa Indian, or Native American tribe. And he said that. He said, sometimes people say that it has to be seen to believe, to be believed. He said, I think it has to be believed to be seen. So it's very much the same concept. And I think that's very true. Sometimes there's stuff going on and you just don't see it because you don't want to believe it, or you choose not to, or you ignore it, or whatever. And I feel that way about the paranormal. You know, the paranormal is really quite normal, especially if you look at ancient people and what they knew, what they believed to be true. And the supernatural is really more natural.
See, I'm starting to believe that way, just in different things that I've seen, read, and, you know, process within my brain, is that, you know, what we consider normal and what we consider abnormal is purely just based on our own, you know, the way that we look at things and what we've seen. You know, somebody who's never seen war cannot sit down with a vet who's been in the middle of it and believe half the stories that they're told of things that have happened in the horrors that they've seen, you know, to put it in, you know, so when they listen to these podcasts of somebody talking about, you know, something horrible that happened in Fallujah or, you know, whatever, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And they refuse to. It's because they actually didn't see it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's an awful lot, or it's very similar to, you know, when we start talking about paranormal or aliens or whatever, it's very hard to conceive that if you haven't actually, even in the slightest bit, experienced that. But the one question I had for you, and this is your general feel for when you're talking to Anzar, and this is more of a personal question than anything. So it is my opinion, and, you know, just from what I've been thinking and everything else, that, you know, society in general has taken, even though we consider ourselves, you know, technologically advanced because we have cell phones and we have satellites and we have blah, 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 blah. But in general, society has taken several steps back from our ancestors, and they knew a lot more than we do, you know, and that we're actually both technologically and spiritually way behind somebody 10,000 years ago.
In some ways, yeah, I think so.
Is what I'm kind of starting to believe, you know, when I look at you know, just ancient drawings, ancient texts, you know, things that are, it's like, whoa, you know, these are all things that, you know, you're starting to see on TV as, you know, these reality TV shows. And it's like, wait a minute, these guys were doing the stuff, you know, doing these spirit walks and had much more knowledge of, you know, astrology and, you know, geometry and how to build things. And, you know, I mean, they had so much more knowledge than we do. They did things we can't even do today with, you know, our huge equipment, you know. And
they didn't have any self-imposed boundaries, and, you know, the kind of the double-edged sword of science is that, you know, science can create as wonderful as science is, it can create a dogma as well.
Sure.
You know, where people don't want to budge off, you know, because it's, oh, that violates the principles I've been taught in my physics book, and you know, and then until it changes, and then there's a whole new set of rules and regulations and so forth. And I think that there are many physicists who, you know, including that group I mentioned, Free, you know, that subscribe to this this idea of a oh, what do you call it? A holographic universe. You know, that the universe is a hologram. You know, and it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And of course, it assumes the quantum, you know, what the quantum world is, and that everything is connected. And it's because everything is one. Everything is part of, you know, of the whole universe. So whether it's you and me, or you know, a distant star, we are connected. So it's mind blowing for a lot of folks, and it brings up this idea that you mentioned earlier about it's hard for people to accept this. The late Jim Marrs, the Texas guy who did a lot of conspiracy stuff, JFK stuff, interesting guy, former journalist, I guess, for the Texas one of the Texas newspapers. He always said that people reach a boggle point. You know, it just boggles their mind and their imagination. So they just shut down, and they said, I can't, you know, maybe I can believe in ghosts, you know, being real, but you start talking about aliens, no, that's just too much. It doesn't register. You've reached the boggle point, until they have enough experience till they go, okay, now their boggle point moved. But there's always the skepticism, even with me, who's had all these different experiences. I still have a skeptical side to me. I always want to check it out and think about it. I don't want to just, you know, somebody said that they talked to Elvis yesterday. And okay, I know that I have spoken to people who've passed on, but still there's that element where I go, yeah, sure. Okay.
Right.
Let me think about that one. And then I tell myself, wait a second, I talk to people who passed on. Let me look into this, you know. And so, but there's that, I think it's a healthy thing to have a little bit of natural skepticism, you know, not to go out and viciously debunk people and, you know, attack their character, but just to say, well, let me think about that for a little bit, and then process it, give yourself some time.
Is that skepticism, or is that discernment?
Yeah, probably discernment. Well, I'll give you an example. My wife, Ginger, she doesn't she doesn't go to, you know, talk about aliens and stuff. She hasn't had alien experiences. She's had some weird little paranormal things, but not what I have encountered.
Yeah.
And one day I was talking about Anzar, talking about alien stuff, and talking to, you know, dead people when I'm on my spirit walks. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you're just not talking to yourself when you're out there?" And it was funny because, you know, she wasn't criticizing. She was just, you know, wondering, pondering, you know, have you ever considered that? And of course I have considered that. Is this real? Yeah. And I keep having to tell myself, yes, it is real. And then I go do it, and it happens. I get information. I talk to people who've passed on. I find out stuff that I couldn't have possibly known about this person. And then, yeah, so it just once again proves that it is real, but yet I still have to almost go through that proof every time. And I think it's just our nature, you know, to want to do that. And of course, we're taught that from a young age. You know, when you have, as a kid, a lot of people have invisible playmates. First thing you do when you go to school is the teacher tells you they're not real. Right. You got to play with the other kids in the class. But I want to play with Johnny. Johnny's my invisible play. No, that's not right. You can't say that. That's not real. So, you know,
I you know, we both have kids, and there are many times in the younger years of kids when they do something and it's like, where in the world did they get that? You know, imaginary play friend, you know, friends, or, you know, they see something in the middle of the night, you know. There's a lot of things that get kind of freaky if you really think about them, and you think, oh, it's just their active minds, those kids, you know, and you're like, yeah, maybe not, you know. And it's, you know, I mean, I do believe that kids have a bigger connection to the world than we do because they aren't as closed-minded.
Yeah, they're open. They haven't been told that it's not real yet, or they haven't believed that it's not real, or been forced to believe it's not real.
Yeah.
And, you know, kids are natural scientists, they're natural psychics, you know, they have a lot of natural abilities. And actually, most of the poltergeist experiences that people have in homes are because of children in the home that don't know they have these abilities and are causing these weird things to happen a lot of times.
Yeah.
So, you know, and eventually, a lot of kids, they just are told it's not real, so they just don't believe it anymore. And they move on with their lives until something happens, and then it challenges that assumption. And,
So,
yeah.
kind of going down that lines, do you believe that somebody who may have shut off or may not have a psychic ability, do you think they could self-actualize to the point to where they could start having those types of experiences
Sure.
on their own?
I think it's inside of people, and people go through this all the time. In the paranormal class, we do experiments. The paranormal class that I teach at Citrus, where I work, and we do the being stared at experiment, where we break off in pairs, have one person turn their back, the other person either looks at them or doesn't look at them for 10 seconds. They either stare at the back of their head or don't. And then after 10 seconds, the person turns around and says, "You were staring at me," or "You weren't staring at me." And most of the time, people, greater than half of the time, much greater than half of the time, people get it right. There's a natural sense, and most people have had that feeling. I feel like somebody's staring at me, and you turn around and somebody's staring at you. You know, where does that come from? That is a sixth sense. So that even people who claim they don't have any psychic ability, a lot of them will have that, or they'll describe it as a gut feeling. I got the heebie-jeebies. You know, I don't think this is right. They just feel like something's wrong. That's a sixth sense. Now, it could also be based on environmental factors and historical precedents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But combined with their gut, they always talk about it's gut. That's what my gut's telling me. So they're not saying this is what my past experience is telling. They're telling it's my gut. So it's an internal feeling that they have. It's a sixth sense. And I think it can be turned back on if people wanted to, you know, worked on it and wanted to do it and accepted it. And you have to believe in yourself. And for me, I just never turned it off because my mom was very psychic. So we practiced reading each other's minds and stuff. So it never got turned off. I learned, because of my mom, I learned that, you know, just do what the teacher says. If the teacher says don't talk about your invisible friend, then don't talk about your invisible friend. You can talk to some people about it. Other people, you just have to be polite and say, okay. You know, you don't have to believe them. You just have to, you know, do what they say while you're around them. So I never lost that part of me. I never lost it. So I think that makes a big difference. And I've had a paranormal life ever since. So.
What I think is funny is when you look at South American cultures, or you look at Middle Eastern cultures, or even African cultures, there's a lot of spiritual things that happen around drug use, you know, of some sort. It's like they, you know, they take something and that allows them to relax or free themselves up to hit a different plane. And one of the things that I have I've started to believe is that, you know, the formulation of a lot of religions where, you know, they call this evil, don't do this. It's, you know, it's spirits, it's the devil, blah, 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 is a control mechanism to keep that kind of stuff at bay.
Sure.
Is what I'm starting to, you know, just because I think there's an awful lot of information and knowledge and there's a lot of benefit to hitting an external intelligence, I guess, to put it a different way. And I think there's been a lot of efforts in humanity to stop that kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm starting to believe that, you know, as marijuana gets legalized, I think you're probably going to see more from state to state. As it gets legalized from state to state, I think you're going to see more people having wider experiences than they do now. And it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens.
And that could aid in this leap of consciousness.
That's where I was going with it.
Yeah, I think it very much could. Now, I'm just here to tell you that, or anybody who's listening, you don't need to do that. but what it is that it gives you a big boost. So I don't use, I don't even drink alcohol, but in my past I have used marijuana, and one time somebody gave me angel dust, which was I got what they call dosed. I didn't know I was getting it. I thought it was hash, and they had white stuff in it, and it was actually angel dust.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. And that was many, I mean, decades ago. And I swore at that time that I would never put myself in that position again, because it was one of the most frightening experiences I'd ever had, because I already have these out of body experiences and stuff normally. I have these psychic things happen to me. And what happened is that I saw my spirit self, and it was kind of like a balloon above me, and it was me, but it was floating above me, and we were divided. And I lost all sense of time and space, and I thought I was flying or floating, and it was a total disassociation from the reality that I'm used to. So it caused me to go into this quantum realm, I think, because I was seeing air and everything. It was too much. And but I can see why somebody would want to do it. Obviously not with that kind of a drug, because that's a very dangerous drug, but there are milder things people can use, or microdosing or whatever that people do. But the ultimate thing is that you don't have to do it. You can train yourself to go into a meditative state and time travel and out of body kind of stuff. You can do that without it. But I think it does help some people. It boosts them. And ancient people did use peyote, or what is it, ayahuasca? Yeah, in South American cultures, and other magic mushrooms, they use. So there's a lot of things that people have used, and I think that it all comes down to one thing: is this leap of consciousness. I think it all ties into that. How do you get to that other level of consciousness where you can see, you can enter into this implicate order, this implicate realm of the quantum world, alien world, spirit world.
The one thing that I always notice when I read about that, or when I listen to somebody who's had a true experience, where it's been, something that they've gone out to search for, is there's always some sort of a medicine man or some sort of a priest or something like that, who takes them through a process or a ceremony that, puts them in a meditative state. And once they reach a certain state, they're searching for some answers, whatever that answer has to be, whatever they think the universe has to tell them. And then once they reach a certain place, a certain state, I guess, that's when they're introduced the drugs, the ayahuasca or the peyote or the whatever it is, and then that just kind of gives them a kick, a little ping right into where they need to be to get their answers. But I always think it's kind of interesting that it's a guided tour. It's not something that, hey, you know what, I think I'll just shoot up and see what I see.
It can be a very dangerous thing if you don't have some help and some guidance with people who know what's going on. And the thing about what happened to me is that because I can get to this meditative state without the use of any pharmaceuticals or natural substances or whatever, I can also get myself out of a meditative state very quickly. If I'm meditating and I start talking to Anzar or whoever, Jean or my other spirit friends, I can just say, okay, I gotta go. And I shut it down, and I'm right back to, but when you take a substance and you're up there doing all that stuff and you want to say, okay, I'm done. No, you can't get out of it until it's done, until it's out of your bloodstream. So you start to lose control. And ultimately for me, it's a control issue. I like to be able to get in and out of my meditative state or that higher level of consciousness myself. And I'm not against people doing what they want to do to find answers, like you said. But for me, I've found I like to have some method of control that's within my control, rather than somebody else's control. And that was why I was very reluctant to do any kind of, with Yvonne Smith, to do the hypnotic regressions. I thought it was going to be like an uncontrolled thing, like you see in a carnival, where people are made to look like chickens or act like a chicken or whatever. But actually, I was in control the whole time. I was just in a meditative state, and she helped me and guided me, without pharmaceuticals, without drugs or anything.
Right.
So it was much different than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be much scarier, but it wasn't. So I would recommend that for people, hypnotic regressions, past life regressions. Those are really pretty fascinating and very safe, if you have a trained hypnotherapist. Right. Who's trustworthy and reliable and so forth, and highly
probably
recommended.
Not the person that's trying to cure you of smoking.
Yeah, that's I know it does. I guess for some people it works. The smoking cessation, whatever they call it. Cessation, is that a word? I don't know. Fancy word for stopping smoking, right? Yeah. So, I thought it was a pretty good experience. And I wanted to mention something before I forget. This disclosure that everybody talks about, they're waiting for the government to provide disclosure. Like we know in June, the government's supposed to come out with a report based on the information they get from all the intelligence agencies and the Department of Defense, the different branches of the military about alien craft, UFOs and stuff. It's supposed to come out in June. So people are saying we can't wait for disclosure, and then we've had glimpses of it because they had in 2017 they had the Tic Tac and the gimbal gun sight footage and all that incredible stuff. And I think it's the wrong approach for us as people who want answers. We want to know the truth, right? You do, I do, everybody does. I think it requires a grassroots effort. So I don't call it disclosure, I call it revelation. And I mean that in every possible definition of revelation. There's a spiritual element to it. I guess there's a religious element to it. If you grew up in this Judeo-Christian kind of thing, but even in different religions, or even people that aren't particularly religious, this idea of a revealed truth. And that comes from within, that comes from the person themselves. So if we sit around and wait for the government to tell us what's real and what's not real, I think we're going to be very disappointed. And it's really something that we have to do. And how we do it is like yourself doing podcasts, talking to people, having your listeners, subscribers listen and think about things, and then maybe share with the other people. And if enough people share our pieces of the puzzle, we can cause this leap of consciousness or foster it along, and we don't have to wait for the government to do it.
My question would be, how many times in the last 50 years has the government done something so outstanding that everybody was happy with it?
Exactly. That's part of the, and I understand the function of government. Well, the main function of government is to provide security for the populace. In other words, preparations for war. That's what it is. I served 6 years in the Army. I know what that's all about. And I'm not anti-military. My eldest son is a career Air Force guy. But we can't leave it to the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Department of Defense to tell us what UAPs or UFOs and what aliens are really here for. Because I think what they're thinking, and which is I'm hoping they're thinking this way, is how can we use this to defend ourselves against our enemies? You got to think that way. You can't be, an eternal optimist and be a general. It's like, you got to think, what is the enemy doing? We got to think about what they're doing. So I think with this stuff, and what Anzar has told me, to share another thing that Anzar said, is that alien technology cannot be used to harm anybody. So if there's the Chinese, the Russians, or even ourselves thinking that somehow we can strap a bomb to one of these UAPs, one of these unidentified aerial phenomena, as the government calls them now, that's the wrong path. And we've seen it played out in those 50s alien movies, right? What's the first thing that happens? They land, and we don't go in there to talk to them. We send the tanks in, and the missiles, and and we start blasting away, and that's our first response is we think it's a military threat. If it was a military threat, I think most of us would agree we'd already be gone.
Mm-hmm.
We would be enslaved. We would, be vaporized, whatever, like that movie Mars Attacks, there may be something that. So this is something else. And I think we'll miss the boat. Not that I don't encourage the government to be more honest, but I think we're going to be disappointed if we just rely on the government to provide this kind of leap of consciousness. Well, that's the point I wanted to make.
If I think about it, okay, so they released some video footage from an airplane, from a jet, or they release some documents of some eyewitness accounts or some interactions or whatever they release, it's not going to be enough, and it's just going to be enough to sensationalize the story. It's not going to be a real gain of knowledge. And I doubt that they're going to actually release anything that would be revolutionary or something that's going to expand anybody's universe. I think those answers come from within.
Yeah,
I really do.
I think you're right.
You have to search for yourself. You have to find your own answers. And if we are on this terrestrial plane to simply hit some goals and move on to the next, whatever it is, realm or, next level or plane or whatever it is. I think that as a society, we've probably looked too much at news and too much at governments to actually answer our questions versus finding them ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on. And yeah, I mean, after that video, you would think, when I saw that video, I go, well, here it is. Okay, now will you believe? And then it was like, okay, and it was like, yay. And then, oh, the next day, okay, what are the Kardashians doing?
I know.
All right, and it's like, oh my, come on, people, come on. I mean, come on, man. Right?
Well, it's almost like we have some sort of a attention deficit disorder. I mean, my middle daughter, she can't pay attention to, I shouldn't say that way. I should say more along the lines of, I don't think there's a whole lot of deep thought there. I think it's an awful lot of topical, like you said, the Kardashians or, whatever the next reality show is that she gets hooked on. I think there's a lot of that. And I think there's a yearning to see what everybody else is doing versus actually obtain some real knowledge. And, I assume that she'll grow out of that at some point in time, but who knows?
Oh yeah, I'm sure she will. And it's just part of the trials and tribulations that young people, I've seen it with my youngest is now 21. So my youngest son. So I've seen all this go through this. And now he really surprises me, with what he is talking about and thinking about. And it's so, somebody said this a long time ago when my kids were really young. They said, you'll be amazed what incredibly interesting, wonderful people your children will turn out to be. Mm-hmm. And you always hope for that. I want them to be a doctor or a lawyer or what, but you really just want them to be happy and be successful and have a good life, ultimately, whatever they end up doing. But then as a result of that growing, they become these incredible people that say these incredible things and think these incredible thoughts. And you're still thinking they're a little kid, but no, they've surpassed you, and everything. It's really, it's wonderful. It really is, quite wonderful. But no, I agree with you about that. It's easy to get a little bit cynical, or not cynical, but just kind of disappointed sometimes in us as people. But then I think, and then you hear about some wonderful thing that somebody does, and you think, oh, there's hope for us yet. Mm-hmm. I think we'll be okay. It reminds me of what Winston Churchill said about America. He said, Americans always do the right thing, but only after they've tried everything else. I thought that's a great assessment of us. We go off onto all kinds of but ultimately we have good hearts and we're good people and we will figure it out. until we move on to the next thing, and then we'll mess up, and then, you know, we'll get
Right.
back to it again. So it's a constant process. But yeah, I mean, back to this, you know, I call it, so I don't call it disclosure, I call it revelation, because I want people to think of it in a spiritual sense. You don't have to be a church-going person or whatever, just this internal sense of who you are, your consciousness, and what is going to be revealed to you. You don't want to just sit there and wait for somebody to tell you what's true and what's not true. And, you know, you could be waiting a long time, or you'll flip from one thing to the other. And I think what those who want us not to think deeply about things, the kind of the model they have is what's been called a flypaper intellect, you know, where, you know, whatever the latest thing is, it sticks to you. And then, you know, you don't have any depth to your knowledge. You know, you don't have time because there's just too much.
Yep.
I find this with my students. They are bombarded with so much information. The biggest job, the biggest help that I can have for them is trying to, you know, go back to discernment, to discern what is good source of information and what is probably not, what is trustworthy, what is not. Because everything that bombards you every day, most of it's propaganda or
Right.
commercial advertising or negative kind of stuff, you know, whatever you want to call it. So it's not that they lack information, they just have too much information and not enough time to process it and decide what's good. So you have to try to help them. When I was in graduate school or in college, I all through graduate school too, I still went to the library and wrote all my information. I had to handwrite it on little 3x5 cards. We didn't have the capabilities that we have now, which is tremendous. But it also caused me to internalize everything I was learning.
Right.
You can't just have a flypaper kind of thing going on when you're writing down quotes, you know, from an article that you just read that's like 40 pages long. So yeah, it's very different. It's a different world, and they have a whole new set of challenges. And I think myself, part of my job is just to help take what's from the past that's good and try to pass that on to young students to use some of that, and also stay on top of whatever they have to stay on top of, you know, the technology and so forth. So try to combine it somehow. Yeah.
Like you said, there's way too much noise out there. And sometimes I think that's on purpose to keep you distracted from what's really happening. You know, again, that's that propaganda.
There is an element to that. Yeah. Because the easiest way to control people is to keep them angry or afraid. When people are angry or afraid, they're not very smart.
Right.
When I'm angry or when I'm afraid, I'm not as smart as when I'm calm.
And there's a lot of anger and a lot of fear right now. So
yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And we're not at our smartest when we're angry or afraid. And people who are malevolent, who want to dominate or control other people, that's what they know to be true, because it's very true about human nature. You keep them afraid or you keep them angry, and they're like like putty in your hands.
Yep. I think we've just explained the Catholic Church.
Well, you know, there's, you know, I didn't, I've been exposed to it, but I never grew up in the Catholic Church. I grew up in the Lutheran Church, where the biggest controversy was, you know, who brought the cookies for the coffee and cookies after the liturgy. Nobody was upset about anything, or, you know, so it was a very, you know, low pressure environment, you know, but yeah, I mean, I you know, my wife grew up Catholic, so I know a little bit about what you're talking about.
Well, I think that I think they actually build a triangle out of it. So you got fear, you've got anger, and then you also have guilt. And I think that's the way they control everybody is, you know, they either make you feel really guilty, or they make you angry about something, or you're very fearful about something. I don't think it's, you know, or a combination thereof. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a lesson that a lot of organizations use, political organizations use the same type of thing. And, you know, they can convince people of you know, accepting one truth, you know, and if you deviate from that, then you're heretical, you know, you're cast out. You know, you can put it in any kind of religious term you want. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. It's mind control. And
Yep.
that is not what Ansar is talking about with leap of consciousness. So
Well, it would be really nice if that happened in society, that
Mhm.
leap of consciousness that you talk about.
Mhm.
And I think we get a lot further if a lot of the noise was taken down a notch.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. Or yeah, and you have to start, I guess we have to start with ourselves by not contributing to the noise.
Absolutely. Which is hard to do.
It is. That's why Ansar always tells me, keep love in your heart and operate from a position of love. That causes me to not say things when I want to say something. I think about it twice and I go, it's not the best time to say this right now. Or if I say something, I'll say it in a different way. And that way I don't contribute to the anger or the, the mayhem that's out
Mhm.
there, the noise that's out there. And yeah.
Oh, I said at the beginning that I like to keep these around an hour. We're sitting at about an hour and 20 minutes now.
I know,
Yeah.
but it was cool. We range of topics. Very
Range
cool.
of topic. What I want to do is when your book on Ansar comes out,
Mhm.
I want to read it and I want to get you back on, and then we can
Sure.
talk about what happened at Contact in the Desert, and
Mhm.
also talk about your book.
Yeah, so that'll be later in the summer.
Yeah.
I'll touch bases with you and make sure you get it. And
Oh,
yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm really interested in how the virtual Contact in the Desert is going to go. So.
I follow you, so as soon as you release it, I'll buy it.
Oh, well, thank you, Jeff. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
You don't need to. I like to buy books. I don't know.
Yeah, well, me too. I'm geez. I run out of room. I don't know what to do. I got to start giving them away to my kids or something. I don't know.
I actually thank God for Kindle, because if my Kindle actually turned into real books, I wouldn't have any room to operate.
Maybe I need to switch back. I did have audiobooks for a while, whatever, Audible.
Yeah.
And then I just got off of that, and then I started buying books again. So it's I got to do something. Something's got to push comes to shove here sooner or later.
It does. It does. I've actually got all three. So yeah. But anyway, with that, I'm going to say, Bruce, thank you very much for all the time that you gave me today. Again, I love our conversations. I can't wait to have you on again. Congratulations on Snark 2 coming out and speaking at Contact in the Desert, which is June 25th to 28th. Look it up on Google, buy some tickets. It's going to be amazing. And I can't wait till your book comes out.
Yeah, I got several of my friends speaking at Contact in the Desert. Yvonne Smith's going to be there, and Terry Lovelace, who's a very interesting guy.
Yeah. I've read a little bit about him, and that was directly from our last conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think you'd like to talk to him.
Well, if you could arrange it, I'd love to.
Yeah, I will. I'll get you guys connected somehow.
That'd be great. That would be absolutely fantastic. I would love that. I'd be really nervous, but I'd love that.
He's a great guy. He really is.
With that, I'm going to call this show to a close. Thank you very much for listening again, and I want you all to have a great day. This is Jeff at the DIY Writer Podcast, telling you to keep your chin up and operate from a place of love. All right. Bye-bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.